everybody today. I will say Mayor Bajalski is ill today. I think it's just a horrible cold. She didn't want to get the rest of the world sick, so she's probably watching. But anyway, we wish her well. And if I could, before we even start the meeting, could I just get a, do I have to wait till the meeting starts to actually get the excused absence?
Yeah, I would go ahead.
Okay, so could I just... Okay, I'll start the meeting. So we're called to order, and we're going to do our Pledge of Allegiance. And I'd ask Jennifer Cohen to lead us.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jennifer. Now, I would ask for a motion for an excused absence for Mayor Bajalski.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
I'm sorry.
Aye.
I just wanted that hesitation.
And the
there for a
motion
second.
passes. Yes, she is excused. So, and we're glad she didn't get us sick today, so we appreciate it. Okay, so we have our first presentation, and for the drinking water proclamation, May 5th through the 11th, 2024, I'm going to turn that over to Commissioner Walker.
Thank you.
And I see we have lots of water guys back here to come up.
So in my opinion, every week should be Drinking Water Week. And with that said, can we get the Water Department up here front and center?
It's a good-looking group.
I just want to know who's minding the water right now.
Okay.
All right, well, it's my privilege and honor to read this proclamation. Drinking Water Week, May 5 through May 11, 2024. Whereas water is our most valuable natural resource, and whereas drinking water serves a vital role in daily life, serving an essential purpose in health, hydration, and hygiene needs of our citizens rely upon. And whereas the City of Dunedin has considered the health environment and social impact of ensuring that facilities and systems provide citizens with a safe, dependable quality and quantity of water both now and for future needs. And whereas water service is essential for public health, fire protection, support of our economy, and the quality of life we enjoy, and whereas the hard work performed by our water sector employees, from designing capital projects to operators ensuring the safety and quality of drinking water, and technicians maintaining reliable distribution and transmission infrastructure, which our community relies upon for high-quality drinking water from its source to consumer taps, is recognized, and whereas we are all stewards of the sustainable water infrastructure which future generations depend, and whereas Dunedin residents and water customers are called upon to help protect our source waters from pollution and to practice water conservation. Now therefore I, Robert James Walker, by virtue of authority vested in me by the Mayor, City of Dunedin, Florida, and on behalf of the entire City Commission, do hereby proclaim May 5th through May 11th, 2024 as Drinking Water Week in Dunedin, and urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Water Works Association and government agencies in activities and events designed to pay tribute to our public utility professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protect our most valuable natural resource, thus advancing the quality of life for all.
Control 3, the water.
Well timed, well timed.
Good morning, Commission, City Manager, everyone. I'm Nan Bennett, proud Utilities Director. This is a really good time for us to highlight what these people do 24/7, 365 days a year behind the scenes, and to make sure that we have clean, safe drinking water coming to every single tap in the city of Dunedin. So thank you very much. I think you said most of what I have written here in the proclamation more graciously than I could have, but I wanted you to get a chance to see a few of the people that provide that service to the city and support the city in that way.
Nan, just 1 second too. I say this a lot, but I can't say it enough. When I started here as a staff person, late 80s, early 90s, the water was a crisis in Dunedin, both the plant and the lines. And and it was huge. I mean, it was just rust coming out. People were, they'd do white clothes and it would be rusty clothes. And so I always say, you don't really care about Mardi Gras, and you don't really care about all these things that we love about our city quality of life if you turn, your water spout on and you got dirty water. I mean, so basics are critical, they're important, and we never want to go back to a point where we, don't keep up. And I'm so proud of our water department. I mean, because again, I think since that time, since learning of that, the leaders stood up, but you guys are the backbone of that, and it's such an important basic service, so thank you. Thanks a lot.
Nan? Oh, nope.
Not so fast. Thought we were going to sneak out.
Yeah, get close. Get nice and close. Everybody get in. Okay.
Tighten up like you like each other.
I need a taller photographer. Okay. I think I can see everyone. Okay, very good. And I have to take it off. Let me say water. Okay, thank you.
Clean water. Thank you, Nan. Thank you, everybody. Okay, we're going to go to citizens' input, and I'm going to ask if anyone in the audience wishes to speak on a topic that is not on today's agenda, if you want to come forward. Okay, seeing no one, I'll close that out. And so we'll go to consent agenda. And the consent agenda, we have approving the minutes of March 7th, March 19th, and March 21st. We also have the Cinco de Mayo celebration revocable license agreement. And so is there anything to be pulled? And so can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? The
Aye.
motion passes unanimously. Do I need to ask for public input on that? And was there any public input on anything to do with the consent agenda? Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to move to the proposed agenda for April 30th, 2024. And I'm going to ask if there's any changes. And Michelle, was there anything that you needed to say about this?
Yes, ma'am. I have one change. We're asking to move the workshop item to an action item. That's the Auditor Selection Committee. I believe we'll be bringing a resolution with that, therefore it needs to be moved to action.
Okay.
We also have an addition that somehow did not make it on the proposed, although it should have. That's the City of Dunedin Comprehensive Vulnerability Assessment Approval of 24 PLN 10 Grant Agreement.
Okay. Okay, any comments from the commission, changes? Okay, then I'd ask if there is a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Okay, thank you. And then we're going to go to our workshop items. That was fast, guys. Okay, we're just cranking along. Okay. If the mayor's watching, I think she'd find that pretty interesting.
Mayor, as Vice Mayor, as Les and Ashley get set up, can I frame this agenda item a little bit for you?
That would be great. Okay, and of course, the item is eligible ARPA city projects initiatives update. So go ahead, City Manager.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Good morning, Vice Mayor and Commissioners and Mayor on TV. So this particular item, we're not looking for direction from the City Commission in particular in regards to the ARPA funding. You may recall back in February of 2022, we looked at all of our ARPA projects and allocations for those projects, and that plan was approved by the City Commission. Incrementally, during that, since that time, you have been approving some projects that we incorporated within the ARPA, for example, the Washington Street project. We felt, though, that at this point, we want you to have a look at it and answer any questions that you may have on ARPA, given it's been a couple years since we looked at the entire comprehensive program. And we have, during that time, submitted some budget adjustments to you, approved to all of you as well. But again, I wanted you to have a look at the entire program that we have put together, that you have approved, and answer any questions that you may have. But as I said, we're not, this is not an approve or don't approve, or it's more of an informational item. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll go to staff presentation.
Thank you. Commissioners, Les Tyler, the Finance Director. As Jennifer mentioned, this item is an update of our American Rescue Plan Act 2021 projects and initiatives. I'd like to introduce two people we have on Zoom today that are here for technical assistance that may come up. We have Matthew Hansen, an Associate Managing Director with Witt O'Brien's, and also Ryan Vergara, a Senior Fiscal.
Excuse me, Les, I'm sorry, but my screen is not on. Okay, but I mean, everybody else's screen is showing this.
Hers is black.
Mine's black. So I just didn't want to get too far into it without, yeah, do you want to check and see if there's something obvious?
Of all the screens not
Of
to
course
light
not,
up.
yeah. I could move over to my former seat, but I guess they knew that the mayor was ill and just blacked it out, right? Let me move this. There we go. Okay, so we did get a break, Commissioner Walker. So, yeah, there we go. Okay, all right. So Les, I apologize. Go ahead.
Okay, great. We have Ryan Vergara, a Senior Fiscal Advisor with Witt O'Brien, with us today, also on Zoom. Witt O'Brien's been working with us since November of 2021, helping us with ARPA eligibility, financial reporting, and technical assistance with the ARPA funding. And our agenda today is basically to go over some general ARPA overviews, some of the requirements for ARPA, status of the projects that we have that have ARPA funding, and then commission direction and next steps moving forward. I wanted to mention that there's two exhibits that are in the staffing report today. First is Exhibit A, which is a status of all ARPA projects to date, and we'll be going over that in quite a bit of detail through the presentation today. And also Exhibit B is a list of eligible ARPA projects and initiatives with a brief description of each project in the packet as well. For some overview and background of ARPA, first it was signed into law March 11th, 2021. It was a $1.9 trillion aid package that provided financial assistance to families, governments, businesses, schools, nonprofits, and others impacted by COVID-19 event. There was $350 billion for state and local governments within that package. And the key points in this slide are that we had the $350 billion for state and local governments, which is the funding source that we fell under. Cities and counties received $130.2 billion. Pinellas County received an allocation of $189.3 million, and our city of Dunedin received an allocation of $18.3 million. The grant funds were paid to us in two payments. We received our first payment in October of 2021 for $9,145,000, and the second payment for $9,145,000 was received in August of 2022 by our city. We've mentioned before, I want to mention again that the funds must be encumbered or committed by December 31st, 2024, and they must be fully spent by December 31st, 2026. Local governments, including cities, are required to provide periodic reporting on the grant, and our finance department has been working with Witt O'Brien, and we together file quarterly reports, and we've been filing those reports since April of 2022. And we will continue to do that through the end of the grant period, December 31st, 2026. This is the eligible use and categories in the fiscal recovery funds. And when ARPA first was rolled out in 2021, there were 7 categories, but the U.S. Treasury over time the programs evolved over time, and they provided more information and guidance to grant recipients. And now there's 10 categories, and I'll just briefly go through these. The first 7 are the same as they were back a couple of years ago. Number 1 was support public health expenditures, address negative economic impacts caused by the public emergency COVID-19, servicing the hardest hit communities and families, number 3. Number 4 was to provide premium pay to essential workers. Number 5 is to invest in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. Number 6 is revenue replacement with a standard allowance up to $10 million in this category. Number 7 is just general administration. And the new ones added were number 8, natural disasters, number 9, surface transportation, and number 10, Title I type projects. I want to mention for the revenue replacements category, number 6, we've mentioned this from time to time through the budget process last year. This category allows ARPA funds to be used for government services up to $10 million. That's very broad. It could be spent on nearly any general government expense, except for a few exclusions that we'll go over in a minute. But government services is the most flexible use category that we have under the ARPA funding, and the funds are subject to streamlined reporting and also streamlined compliance requirements. Now, these are the ineligible uses of ARPA, and these have been the same since it was rolled out in 21. There's been no changes. First, they do not want you to offset reductions in revenue in taxes, and also do not want you to deposit into pension funds, funding debt service, funding legal settlements or judgments, or deposits into a rainy day fund or financial reserve. And now I'd like to roll into the status of our ARPA projects and initiatives. But before we go over the projects, I'd like to briefly go over some of the 24 budget adjustments that the city manager had mentioned earlier that we've had thus far, from October to date this year. And on this slide before you, we've got the project's name and the purpose, and then we've got the commission date that it was discussed. And so anyway, this is the first 2 are new projects. The first 2 are a Washington Street drainage improvement project and a Toronto Blue Jays PDC irrigation augmentation study. Those are new and were added in 2024. And the majority of these other adjustments are for mainly transferring funds from one project to another. And the largest of which is, and we discussed this a lot during the Skinner Boulevard project when that was presented a few months ago. We moved approximately $2.985 million of ARPA funds from the Highlander Aquatic Complex to the Skinner Boulevard project. We did that because we knew that the construction of the pool was going to be done later than Skinner. So due to the timing of encumbering the funds, we moved those dollars from one project to another. And what we did was we left the design costs on the aquatic complex and moved the rest of the dollars to the Skinner Boulevard project. And for general project status, we've taken the projects and put them into 3 different categories. And the first is completed projects, and that'll be the next slide. We'll walk through the completed projects. Then we have a slide showing the ARPA-funded projects that are fully encumbered and committed as of March 19, 2024. That's sort of our cutoff. Then we'll have a slide that will be a list of the ARPA projects that are either partially committed or encumbered, or the project has not started to date. And there's been no money spent on it as of March 19, 2024. Big picture, I want to mention that in Exhibit A in the staffing, it shows all the projects, and it shows that we've spent $7.1 million, actual expenditures, $7.1 million of our $18.3 million in ARPA funds. We've also encumbered $5.6 million. So the total of the spent and the encumbered is $12.7 million, which is about 70% of our total ARPA funding of $18.3 million. And that leaves about $5.5 million that's unencumbered, as of 3/19/2024. And again, that's just a snapshot in time. So moving to the completed projects, this shows the projects as of 3/19 that have been completed completely. And if you looked it shows the project name on the left, then the project date it was presented to commission, or when commission approved this project to move forward as an ARPA project, and the actual cost incurred. It shows the column to the left, and then it shows the expenditure category on the far right side. And I want to mention a little bit about the expenditure categories. For example, if you look at the nonprofit grants, the first line item, that falls under category 2.34, negative economic impacts within the ARPA guidance. That's the category that it falls under to be up for eligibility. And there's many categories within the guidance, but that's the one that project falls under. And I also want to point out, you see quite a few that are shaded that say revenue replacement. That's category 6.1, and that's the category that we talked about a little bit earlier, that we can have up to $10 million. They call it a standard allowance, and that's the most flexible category that we have within our ARPA funding. So we're putting lots of projects there because we have the ability to do that, and it's more flexible and also less audit risk down the road if the city is audited. And then we move. These projects are fully committed and or encumbered. This slide is, again, as of March 19, 2024. I want to point out that one thing we've done is, if you look at the second line down, the Witt O'Brien contract, we have a contract with Witt O'Brien for $361,000, and we're proposing that be reduced from $361,000 to $150,000 for grant reporting purposes. And the reason for that is the expenditure deadline for the grant is 12/31/2026. Based on actuals to date, we've paid Witt O'Brien $129,000 to date, and we do not expect that we'll spend that full encumbrance of $361,000. So for grant purposes, we're proposing that we propose $150,000 to be spent for grant purposes, and anything paid to Witt O'Brien above the $150,000 will be paid from our ARPA investment earnings. And there's no restrictions on the payments of interest earnings in ARPA, and those funds are completely flexible. And we'll continue to have Witt O'Brien be under contract and provide our quarterly reporting and technical assistance, but we will after the first $150,000, we'll move it to another funding source and not part of the grant. And we'll talk more about the ARPA fund investment earnings in a few minutes in a couple of slides. And in general, we don't want an encumbrance or contract amount as of December 30th, 2024 to be more than we plan to spend after that date. And that's sort of why we're proposing that we handle that contract that way. The leftover encumbrance, if we did that, could possibly leave grant money on the table at the end, and we want to obviously make sure that doesn't happen. And we'll continue to monitor all the projects that are not completed in the months ahead, and be sure we don't have a situation where we have an encumbrance that may be unspent after 12/31/2024. And this is the list that we'll go over in a little more detail, because these are the projects that are partially committed or not started at all in some respects. And these projects we continue to monitor closely in the months ahead. The first is the Downtown East End Plan project. We've had actual dollars spent on that of about $57,000. But I want to mention for that project that staff is planning to bring forward to your commission a proposal to move the $185,000 that is available budget on the right-hand side. The Economic Development Director is planning to bring to the commission soon a proposal to move that funding to a downtown paver and walkability project phase 2, and that'll be coming to the commission for your consideration in the near future. The next project is Skinner Boulevard. We have $2.7 million that's uncommitted, and part of this is the commission. Your commission approved an FDOT agreement for that project back in February 8th, 2022, and that agreement has not been fully executed yet by FDOT. They've not signed it and fully executed it, so we've not paid them yet. We expect that to happen in the near future. Once that is fully executed, this amount will be reduced to about $700,000 of uncommitted, and We'll be monitoring this project closely. I keep in close conversations with Bob Ironsmith and his team. There's other utilities such as WOW, Frontier, and others that they're working on agreements with for that project. We hope they should be encumbered by December 31st, 2024, but if that's not the case, we will consider moving some of the funding for this project to that revenue replacement category 6.1 that's more flexible and not in category 2.37. So we'll be monitoring that once we get in the September timeframe to determine if we think, well, there'll be dollars not encumbered, and one of our best ways to handle that is to put it in the revenue replacement, at least those dollars that are not going to be encumbered. And the next project is the broadband internet project. We've had some actual expenditures in this project, and we also have an encumbrance. But if you look at on the far right, we do have 1.6 million that is uncommitted, and that's for future construction. We just began the design work for that project, and depending on the timing of when the design is done and when the construction bids are received and under contract, if we feel that that will not take place by December 31st, 2024, what we will consider doing is likely drawing down that revenue replacement in our September 30th quarterly grant reporting. And what we do, for example, is the revenue replacement I mentioned is completely flexible. So what we do is we would spend the grant down by $1.6 million for sheriff costs, more than likely sheriff cost and our fire department expenditures for a couple of months, and we would draw those down on the grant, and then we would, in the general fund, we would earmark or commit a capital project reserve in the general fund titled Broadband Internet Project. So we'd have a capital reserve in the general fund for Broadband Internet Project, and it'd be reserved for that purpose. And once that's done, the deadline for encumbering the funds for that project by December 24th goes away, and as well as the requirement to spend it by 2026. It's basically changing the color of the money on the project. The grant requirement's met, but we also have the project, tracked in our general fund to do at a future date. And I mentioned this is part of the flexibility of the $10 million standard allowance. We can draw down the grant, but we can still do these projects without running into these timing concerns of 2024 encumbrance or spending by 2026. The next project is the Clearwater Ferry project. This project has been delayed, as the Commission all knows, and depending on, as we work through the 25 budget, with this project, this could be moved to another project by the Commission, or if it stays, we can do the same thing. We can draw this project down $55,000 and set a capital project again in the general fund for that to track as well, if we decide to go that route. The affordable housing project of $650,000, we continue to monitor this project. The Director of Economic Development, Bob Ironsmith, has another affordable housing project opportunity that he will be presenting to the Commission, I believe, in early June of this year. And we're hopeful that will result in a positive response. But if we're not by September 30th or that timeline, if we we don't have an agreement and we're not in some contract, we'll consider drawing down those funds as revenue replacement, the same as I mentioned for the broadband, and we would draw down the 650 against the grant would show fire or sheriff costs, and then we set up a capital project in the general fund titled Affordable Housing Project, $650,000, and it'd be tracked in the general fund and completed in the future in the general fund. As of today, the last item there, we have $277,800 of unassigned ARPA funding, and about $211,000 of that is the funding, the reduction in the encumbrance that we have with Widow O'Brien that I mentioned a little while earlier. We reduced their PO on the grant by $211,000 to be paid for by the investment earnings. So with that change and some other dollars that were unspent, we've got $277,000, and our plan will be to work through the 25 budget process with the city manager and your commission and apply that to a project or two as we work through the 25 budget. And the interest earnings to date, and this is as of, again, the March timeframe, through 23 and 24, halfway through the year, we've earned about $698,000 of investment earnings in the ARPA fund. That amount continues to grow and will continue to grow through the rest of 24 as well. The cash balance in the fund will be spent down in the months ahead as we continue to complete projects, but we do expect to receive some interest earnings in 25 and 26 as well. We're showing the remaining purchase order amount for Widow Bryan of $211,000 here, netting against the uncommitted interest, which brings it down to $486,000. And I would estimate roughly our interest earnings to be about $150,000 more the rest of this fiscal year. So through September 30th, 2024, I would expect that to grow about $150,000 more. And I want to mention the interest earnings can be used for contingency on our existing ARPA projects, or it can be used for any other purpose as we move forward. It's totally flexible. In summary, this is a snapshot of where we're at as of March 2024. We will continue to monitor these projects, and we will also work closely with Widow Bryan and the city manager to be sure we're in a good position to make sure that we meet this. What is an obligation, per the guidance. So the guidance 17.6 in this document basically states that for obligation purposes, it can be an agreement or a memorandum of understanding imposing conditions of the use of the funds by an agency or part of the government's receiving to carry out the program. And the understanding can be between, within the city, the understanding can be between the city manager and the public works director, for example. And with proper language in an internal memo, this could suffice as an obligation under the revised ARPA guidance. So that just came out. We need to vet that with our procurement team more and also our city attorney as well. We're not recommending we do this at all at this time, but it is adds another layer of flexibility and another tool in our toolbox as we consider moving forward to make sure we spend the dollars and do the program the best way we can. Treasury received a lot of questions on this obligation. In our world, an obligation is a contract or an encumbrance. It's pretty simple in the finance world, but there were a lot of questions, so they were trying to, I think, here add a little more flexibility and a little more clarity on that topic. And that concludes our general comments, and be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Les. I guess we've got commission questions. I'm going to start with John, Commissioner Trunga.
Thank you. From a Widow Bryan standpoint, do they see any change in the ending date? You talked about the flexibility of some of this, and I was just curious, as we've been watching some of this change and the addition of the categories, I'm just wondering if there's going to be a change in that, depending on perhaps availability of supply chain, for example, of some things that our people were working on. Is there a movement towards that? I'm just curious.
No, that's a great question. And I'm going to turn that over to Matt. Matt, could you help answer that question? Matt Hanson.
Can you just share with me who's making that decision then within the government? Is there there must be a specific department? I'm just curious.
So it's the U.S. Department of Treasury, based on the appropriations language that established the American Rescue Plan Act. Previous COVID programs, obligation and expenditure information was not written into the legislation itself, so they had some flexibility. With ARPA, those dates are memorialized in the legislation, so they don't have any administrative ability to extend it.
And so could the legislators extend it?
Congress certainly could,
Okay,
but
thank you.
given the environment we're in right now, it's highly unlikely.
Just curious, thank you. That's really,
Okay. Commissioner Gao?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Yeah, we were all kind of aware of all these projects, and so there's really not a lot of questions in that regard. I don't even know that they're concerns. There's been a lot of movement on projects and buckets of money and when it will be done, completed, whatever. So I just want to make sure that we're okay there, and we have unassigned revenue replacement bucket. And when ARPA first came out, I can't recall, was that part of the discussion where, and could we have put everything in one bucket and then just kind of replenished ourselves as opposed to putting money directly towards projects?
You did?
Right, did we put it all there?
Yeah, we could.
Some.
We could have.
Right.
That's a good question. We could have, that 10 million, for example, that 10 million, we could have drawn that down in the general fund the first 6 months of the grant, and then applied fire costs, fire department, sheriff department, and others, drawing the grant down that way, and then use that money in the general fund, how the commission, in whatever way the commission wanted to, on projects or whatever they wanted.
Okay.
We did put $3 million in revenue recovery, though.
Right. Yeah, we put 3 million.
Yes,
That's right.
yes.
Yeah. Right.
And as we move money around because of the status of some of our projects, and it looks like we're still looking at that today, how quickly, as we approach December 31st, when might be a drop dead date, or when might we cross over to a period of concern that we didn't reallocate those funds on a specific project? And we have time to then readdress it and put it in another project.
Yeah, I think we have time to readdress it. The projects in that $10 million, which today, the snapshot, all those that say revenue replacement shaded are the ones that we would envision being under that $10 million. We can draw those down at any point. So those like, say, the end of September would be, in my mind, the decision point to draw those down. For instance, I mentioned the broadband project, draw that down and put that as a reserve formally in the general fund. Those are very, very easy to draw down. The ones we need to watch closely are the categories, and I mentioned Skinner. Skinner's one we need to watch closely because we don't know exactly, when that's going to start. We don't know when it's going to start for sure. We know it's a little later than we thought 2 months ago. So if we don't have all of our agreements in place for Skinner and encumbered, then we'll make a change, and we'll take some of that project and apply it to revenue replacement, and then we would probably move the pickleball court to a category which it's not now. So we do have some good options for flexibility if we need to move funding off the Skinner, which is really the only one that I'm concerned about right now at all, because the others, we have a great solution by just drawing down the funds and tracking them as capital projects in the general fund.
So if I may add, Vice Mayor, that all of those amendments and that movement will be approved by the City Commission as well. You'll
Right.
see it.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
I would assume that would be the case.
Yeah.
And just in speaking of the Skinner Boulevard project, because that's at the front of my mind, actually, and the holdup now is FDOT. Mm-hmm. And so if they hold off on making their decision and we have to reallocate the funds, is that project in jeopardy at any point?
Well, I would say on our side, it would not be, because we would be able to fully fund the project with what our current budget is right now. I see no issues there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you, Lance.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Walker?
Thank you, ma'am. Related to Skinner Boulevard project, are you able to share any of the the risks associated with the FDOT agreement? What's holding it up, I guess, is the question.
I'm going to
We have
let Bob
Bob
answer
answer
that
that.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I may, Commissioner Bob Ironsmith, Director of Economic Development and Housing. It's really just a really minor holdup. Thursday night, we're bringing to you for a maintenance agreement for the crosswalks on Skinner. As soon as that is taken care of, we're going to have a signed agreement probably next week, late next week with DOT, and from there we wire the money. So this is really just a very small blip, and we expect this to continue very quickly from here. They'll go out with their bid letting for the project. So we're actually feeling pretty good about this. We just needed to get this crosswalk agreement approved, and right from there we'll get it signed. So we're actually in pretty good shape.
Got it.
So I'm not overly concerned, or I'd be in Jennifer's office, and I have. We're pretty good, so thank you.
Oh, I appreciate that,
Okay.
thanks. Regarding the broadband internet, I know that you stepped us through the sequencing of that project, and I apologize for asking if you could just repeat that. There was things a little unclear to me, and.
Yeah, we've spent some dollars in the project. We have an encumbrance now for design work. We just hired a firm to do design work for the 3 phases downtown that your commission approved within the last month or so. So that money's obligated, and I think the design's supposed to be done by September is the estimated date. So if it's done by September and there's a timely turnaround and being able to get a bid and an award by December, then that one, may be encumbered well before the end of December. But if it's not, and if design's delayed, or there's the bid, there's timing issues with the bid, then what we do is, with the uncommitted amount of $1.6 million right now that we have, and that's for construction. That's funding set aside for construction for the project. We would draw the grant down $1.6 million using general government expenditures, and we would likely use the sheriff contract and our fire department expenses over 1 or 2 months period would cover that. We draw the grant down, $1.6 million, and that same amount we drew down, with your commission's approval, we would do a committed capital reserve in the general fund of $1.6 million and it would be titled broadband project, same as it is now, and then the project would continue to be completed through the general fund and paid out of that capital reserve to complete that project.
Okay, all right. Okay. And that would fulfill the requirement for us to be encumbered and fully committed by the end of this calendar year.
That's correct. Yeah.
All right, good. And this is a fundamental question, but what is when we say fully committed, what exactly does that mean?
Fully committed on these projects means that it's in a contract, and so we consider that committed.
Okay. And then last question I had is with regards to the interest earnings. Close to $700K, less 211 to Wood O'Brien, about 400 and something. What are the criteria, the limitations on how that money gets spent? Are there deadlines associated with the interest earnings as well, or?
No, the interest earnings there's no restrictions of timing or what we spend that money on. It's totally flexible. Yeah,
Okay.
Totally.
That's fantastic. Yeah, well, thank you very much. That's all I've got.
Thank you. So just a couple things. So, Les, as I listen to you, it's like, as we kind of walk through a lot of things over the last 2 years or whatever, I've always felt like kind of the ARPA money and the penny money and the general fund, lots of flexibility between all those as we flow through our projects. And in reality, ARPA's got their deadline, but because there's all kind of ways to flex the money around, there's really, the deadlines aren't that meaningful. They're meaningful, but I don't want to call it a game, but it's like a game of moving the money so that you're really not hampered to your deadline times. So Can you comment on that? I know
Yeah,
I didn't
they-
put it that well, but I mean, it is kind of a money-changing, moving the money around kind of game so that you don't hamper yourself to when you have to complete the projects.
Yeah, they're, you know, they do have deadlines, but that $10 million stand allowance really changed the game. I mean, it really did.
Right.
I mean,
I mean, we could sit here and draw,
you know.
pay all kinds of general fund bills and just have an excess in the reserve to pay for these projects and not be that, held back by these deadlines.
That's true. Up to that $10 million, that's true. You know, again,
Okay.
we've applied quite a bit to the 10 million already, probably five or 5.5 million. But yeah, that's true. We do have flexibility. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, because sometimes I felt like when you had the deadlines we've had and you get the construction prices we've gotten, that with all these places around the country buying to get these projects done, it's no wonder costs are higher, right? Because everybody's trying to demand the same people to do the same stuff. So, okay, I don't really have any questions. Explain that new ruling again that you said about the letter with Public Works.
Yeah, there's a new ruling that trying to broaden the definition of what's a commitment or an obligation, and basically a memorandum, an internal memorandum in the city that could be between the city manager and a department head. It wouldn't have to, it could be the commission too, but it could be the city manager based on how I've read it and how Whit O'Brien's read it to date. Basically, if you have language in there that commits to the project being done by the December 2026 deadline, and you show that there's commitment to and a plan moving forward to spend those dollars by those deadlines, and there's certain language in there that internal memorandum of understanding, the U.S. Treasury will consider that an acceptable obligation of the funds, as of 12/31/24. It's a little bit out of the norm, and again, I need to share this information with Jennifer, our city attorney, and kind of get their input too. It's but it is another added layer of flexibility that some public agencies could use to try to meet that deadline, especially agencies that have a lot of funding that's not in that 10 million.
Right.
Because
for us, why would we even take a chance with that? Because we have other ways to flex it. So.
right, true, yeah.
Okay, no, that's good. I don't have any other questions, but appreciate it. So I'm just going to open it for public input, if anybody would like to come up and speak to the issue. Okay. Okay, and now I'm going to close, I guess that was the public input, right? I'm going to close the public input, and I'm going to go to commission comments, and I'll start with, on this side, Commissioner Gao.
Thank you. Well done, Les. Thank you. I know that this has been something to handle, and you've done a wonderful job, you and your staff, so thank you.
Yeah, so I guess this is for a little bit for just the education for the public. The ARPA funding was unprecedented in a lot of different ways, and it was actually provided a lot of benefit to the regional and local communities. And of course, with any federal program, it only gets more bureaucratic and more complicated as we go along. And I have been asked the question, okay, so with regards to how this was managed and everything associated with it, I do want to point out that in terms of, in this case, having a consultant assist us with this was an absolute imperative because of the complexities, the tracking, the expansion of the scope, a whole lot of different reasons why this had to be monitored, and we had to have somebody on the pulse of this. So Whit O'Brien performed that role, and what we gained out of that is the elimination of the risk that the city would have to take on with regards to using those funds and spending them for the purpose for which they were intended. And as part of that, that reduction in risk is significant because there are scenarios where if the decisions on how the money gets spent were ever to come into question, the drawback or the clawback in terms of those funds would be really problematic for the way that we run this. So, yeah, I will say that having seen ARPA from two different perspectives, from a federal perspective and then from a local perspective, I'd say, you know, we've done a pretty good job managing those funds, and I'm very happy about that. So, thank you.
Great. Commissioner Tonga?
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. I know we've been talking offline about this as well to some degree about what happens. I'm encouraged by the flexibility that the federal government has had with this program in allowing the creation of the 3 additional and allowing this revenue enhancement. I think that's great, and I think the way that you guys are handling it now gives us the most flexibility. It was obviously a program designed to increase some spending within the government. Might be a little bit in conflict with the Fed, but nevertheless, I think they've given a number of good options of how to handle this, and you followed those. So, from what I see now, it looks like we're in pretty good shape for the maneuvering within the program. So I appreciate your update on that, and I appreciate the fact that we had Whit O'Brien on the line as well, should we have made any misunderstandings. So thank you for the presentation.
Great. And I agree with everything that's been said. I mean, these dollars have done a lot of good for our community, and I agree with Commissioner Walker about the importance of Whit O'Brien. Also, you know, really, I have to say, Les and Ashley, when I sit here, there's also that importance of when you listen to someone like I just listened to you, Les, and it's about moving this money and doing this thing to this money and, you know, all the shell matches. It's really important to have trust in your finance people, and I have total trust, and so it's really important. Again, the monies have done a lot of good for our community, but we sure don't want to put ourselves in a clawback situation, and I think we've done everything to make sure that doesn't happen, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to, unless anybody wants to take a break, we're going to keep on moving. We're good? Okay, so we're going to go to, and thanks both of you again, Les and Ashley and Whit O'Brien. We're going to move to the next item, a summary of the Freebie Dunedin Loop 6-month pilot project and request for direction to continue the program. And I'll just ask the city manager if she wanted to say anything before we move to staff presentation.
Actually, Mayor, if I may, let's go over the overview, and then I'd like to make a few comments, Vice Mayor.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay. It's you guys' show. Go, George.
Vice Mayor, Commissioners, bear with me. I got a little bit of a head cold here, but I'm going to try and turn this over quickly to Jason, so he'll give you the fun presentation and fill you in on all the facts. But just by way of background, as the Commission knows, in early 2023, the city put out an RFP, and the intent was to find a clean mobility provider that would provide an alternative transportation option in and around the downtown. Freebie was the successful candidate. And we did, shortly after they were on board, we launched the 6-month pilot project. That pilot has basically concluded. There's a couple more weeks left on it, but it has basically concluded. And again, I will quickly turn it over to Jason from Freebie, who will present some of the data that he acquired and talk to you a little bit about cost recovery and some other aspects of the program. Ultimately, we're looking for commission direction on whether to continue the program. And before I turn it over to Jason, I did want to quickly thank Kathy Gadamer, who I think is behind me. She did another incredible job managing this program and coordinating with Jason and the working group. And special thanks also to the working group, which consisted of Nicole Delfino, Sue Burness, Vince Gizzi, Trevor Davis, Mary Sheets, and Grant Painter. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jason, and he will provide you with this quick presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Madam Vice Mayor, Commissioners, Madam Manager. It's great to see everybody again. Again, my name's Jason Spiegel, one of the co-founders and managing partners at Freebie. Excited to be here today to provide an update on the Freebie Dunedin Loop pilot project. As George mentioned, is now coming up at the end of a full 6 months. We're very happy with the results of the program, both from a ridership standpoint, a customer feedback standpoint, an economic impact standpoint. And today I'm going to provide you guys a presentation, talk a little bit about what the original goals were of the program, go through some high-level stats, talk about the survey that was implemented, some recommendations that we have on continuing to enhance the service, and then we'll end by answering any additional questions that you guys might have. So again, looking back at the original intent and the goals of this program, the main objective was to introduce an innovative turnkey transportation solution serving the residents, visitors, business employees by providing connectivity to everything that downtown Dunedin had to offer. All the work, shopping, restaurants, events, nightlifes, and in doing this, we developed and implemented a 6-month pilot project that helped to really accomplish these goals, help with a lot of the parking challenges within the downtown core there. And one of the main goals was to do this in a very sustainable way, using 100% electric vehicles, promoting a cleaner and greener downtown environment there. Another big goal of the program, again, was to help during the spring training when the Toronto Blue Jays were here and, you know, things get crazy and a lot of people are in town, helping them provide mobility to and from TD Ballpark. And then again, at the end of the day, ultimately really just help make this community a place where you can live, work, and play and not need to own a personal vehicle there. So very high level in terms of the executive summary. You know, we had very, very good growth throughout the entire pilot. It was a very successful pilot. We moved over 8,000 passengers, and we really doubled the amount of ridership from month 1 to month 5. The service, you know, had tremendous feedback from passengers, from internal stakeholders here, and again, the feedback that we were receiving within this pilot program, some of the highest rating that we have across over 40 of the municipalities that we currently operate today. But outside transportation, you know, extends way beyond that. It's all about how do we connect passengers with everything that, you know, this city has to offer within the downtown core, to local businesses, to all the attractions, and really just enriching the entire overall community experience. Freebie as a partner, we don't look at ourselves as a vendor. Our job is to go above and beyond for you guys to provide the highest level of execution, be there when anything that you guys have asked, and I think that, you know, throughout this pilot, we have really shown our loyalty to the community here. And, you know, again, our goal is to really continue to build on this momentum, elevate the expectations for the future, and it's going to be driven by, again, innovation, community partnership, and just high execution on the service level side. So the program did launch November 2nd. It operates 4 days of the week from Thursday through Sunday. Thursday was 11 a.m. to 10 p.m., Friday and Saturday from 11 a.m. to 12 a.m., and Sunday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. We launched with 3 vehicles. And in terms of the routes, we had 2 routes. There's an off-season route and an in-season route. The only difference between the 2 routes is that in season, which is when the Toronto Blue Jays are here, it extended to the TD Ballpark there. But these are the 2 routes that had been implemented over the last 6 months. And again, in terms of the customer experience, there was multiple ways you were able to request a ride. You can wave the vehicle down as it was going by along the route, anywhere along the route there. But then also, you can also download the Ride Freebie mobile app. You can actually request a ride along the route as well. You can see that vehicle in real time. And with both of those ways to be able to request service, the average headway between both the fixed route and basically using the app was about 7.5 minutes. The customer satisfaction, so people were able to rate their experience after every ride. It was a 99.6, meaning that it was extremely rare if anybody rated the service under 5 stars. And the peak times of the service were Thursday from 12 to 2 and 5 to 9, Fridays from 5 p.m. to 12 a.m., Saturdays from 1 p.m. to 11 p.m., and on Sundays from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. We created a real-time tracking website for both the city and for passengers to be able to track the vehicles from any phone, any computer. You'll be able to see where all the highlighted stops are, which were points of interest. You can see where the vehicles are at in real time, so you knew and had that transparency on when that vehicle was going to come and be able to pick you up there. In terms of, again, high-level stats, over 8,000 passengers, which is tremendous for a pilot program that's only operating from a Thursday through Sunday. 2.5 passengers per ride on average, over 3,000 rides that were completed. The male-female breakdown was almost, similar. It was a 53% leaning more female, 47% male. And 2/3 of the riders actually waved the vehicle down, while 1/3 used the app to be able to use the service there. In terms of the age demographic, which we're able to collect with people that are using the app, over 78% were over the age of 51, 11.5% were 35 to 50, and 10.5% were 21 to 34 there. We also created for you guys an internal dashboard to be able to track all the metrics in real time, be able to pull up all the historical data, all the heat mapping, really just providing you guys every piece of data from the program at your fingertips there. And I know Kathy and George really use this tool on a weekly basis to to give you guys what the ridership and kind of all the great things that are happening with the program. But this dashboard screen on the left-hand side, this is kind of the live dashboard. It gives you real live stats for that day. The screen on the right-hand side are the heat mapping, so you can pull any date, be it one day, a week, a month, the entire program, and you can see where people are getting picked up and dropped off within the downtown core there. We also provide access to all the raw data. So again, it's a very transparent service where the pickup address was, the drop-off, how many passengers, if it was an app ride, if it was a flag-down ride, how long in terms of miles that ride was there. All this data was able to be exported to Excel, and again, worked hand in hand with Kathy and the team to really make sure they understand what was happening with the program. And then also one of the tabs in the live dashboard, it allowed you guys to be able to create these really cool reports that showed all the different KPIs of the program. Again, the ridership, the ratings, the male-female breakdowns, the vehicle miles traveled, historical data, the day-by-day data, the hour-by-hour data. But again, this was a tool that we created for you guys to make sure that managing the program and understanding the success, was just a click of a button away there. So where were people riding? Obviously the main places people were going were to and from the restaurants and bars, going downtown shopping, to and from the hotels, the marina, TD Ballpark during the in-season, the hospital, a lot of the employees were using it, and the Meese Life community. They were a huge user of the service, probably one of the main users of the program, and again, as you see on the heat map here, there was really action all along the route throughout the pilot program. In terms of the environmental impact, again, using 100% electric vehicles, we had over 12,000 vehicle miles traveled, which related to over almost 4.5 million grams of CO2 from being prevented from coming out into the atmosphere here within the city. This is all tracked again through the dashboard there. But again, this was one of the big goals of the program. Again, launching a 100% electric fleet, reducing carbon emission, and based on all these vehicle miles traveled, would have been way different if it was used with a gas vehicle there. In terms of public outreach and special events, again, worked hand in hand with the city staff, everybody that was involved with the program to make sure that we put together a very, very sophisticated outreach program, attending tons of events, tons of presentations to really get the word out of the program itself. And then again, we partaked in all the special events that were here during the weekends. We worked hand in hand with Trevor when the Villages Women's Group would come in on days off. We would bring in our staff at our own cost to help provide pickup and drop-offs for the folks that were coming in town there. But again, our main goal here was to really show you guys that we're not just a vendor to the city. We're here to be a partner, and we're really focused on the long-term success of this program. We implemented a survey a few months back, and we had, overwhelmingly positive feedback from basically many of the respondents. Over 80%, over 86% of the respondents recommend continuing the program. 74% of the respondents believe that the route is convenient. 84% of these respondents would like to see advertising play a role in helping to reduce the cost of the program. 77% think that the hours are adequate, and 22% would like to see an expansion of the hours and days there. Additionally, 87% of the respondents believe the drivers are professional and courteous. 84% feel the service is extremely comfortable and clean. 85% would recommend the service to a friend, and 2/3 of the respondents had used the service multiple times there. And the best kind of response that we got was that 40% of the respondents would have used a personal vehicle if freebie was not an option to be able to move around the downtown core there. So when it comes to recommendations and enhancements for the service, on a very high level, I think that the data and the feedback has really shown that this downtown looper should be a permanent staple within the downtown core here. Now, I don't recommend expansion today at this time. I think we need to collect data over the next 6 months, since we only have 6 months of data here, collecting more feedback from the stakeholders from the city here, coming back after a full year of data, and really massaging out to understand when we need to add more vehicles to the fleet, when we have to add more hours, what would potential days look like to add, during certain times of the year, specifically, again, during the spring training months there. But again, I'm truly confident that the data that we have, again, compared to a lot of the cities that we operate, was extremely, extremely positive. So we do recommend keeping this service as a permanent staple here within the downtown. Another big recommendation that we have is really utilizing the technology that we have in place, not implementing a fully on-demand service, but more of a flex service. And the way that would work is that, we would still have the route that we currently have, where the vehicles are going around the route. People would be able to request along the route there, but instead of taking them, if somebody needs to, to go basically backwards, instead of going all the way around the route, you'd be able to pick them up, drop them right off at their destination, and get right back onto the route there. And what that's going to do, it's going to drive much higher ridership. We had a few folks that wanted to jump on the loop, but didn't really want to go around the entire loop to get to where they need to go. It was a little bit inefficient there. This would really kind of help with that type of challenge, and it's really going to help on the customer and make it just a more personalized experience there. Again, still keeping the loop concept, but adding a little bit more technology to it to make it more efficient to drive that higher ridership there. And then again, we all know that during spring training, there's a lot of folks in town, and we would definitely recommend looking at additional vehicles during those specific game days, because we were just we had so much ridership during the last month when the Blue Jays were in town here. So this, really talks about what expansion pricing would look like. And one of the most important things I want to, show from this slide is that as more hours are implemented, it only incrementally goes up in cost a little bit there. So again, adding a 40% increase in service level, meaning more hours, it's only a 27% increase in cost. Adding a 75% increase in service levels, a massive expansion, again, it's only a 42% increase in cost there. But again, our recommendation is to continue with the current service levels over the next 6 months, come back at that time and really put together a full year plan based on all the data that we collected. There might be times of the year where you might only need one vehicle out there to really kind of save on the efficiency and the cost effective of that program, and use those dollars again during the high season when the Toronto Blue Jays are here, when special events are in town. But again, this is, again, just shows you the cost breakdown for what a potential expansion can look like. And again, as more hours are added to the fleet, it doesn't incrementally go up the same amount in terms of percentage there. Advertising, again, can also play a role in helping to subsidize the cost of the program. Again, if we start kind of going down that path, you could probably look at anywhere between 10 and 30% of a reduction in the cost of the service just through that mechanism alone. And, you know, that kind of comes to the cost recovery here. What are some additional ways that the city can really take advantage of helping to subsidize the program? Again, we talked about advertising sponsorships for local, regional, and national brands that want to obviously advertise within the downtown core here. A big portion of that revenue goes back to the city to help lower the cost. There's tons of grant opportunities out there. There's a grant coming down the pipeline right now with FDOT that will help expand the service of the program, and that will help pay for 50% of the cost over the next 3 years as that expansion takes place. We have an entire grant team in-house that would work hand in hand with your staff to help write that grant, make sure we're providing all the data, all the feedback from the program there. Another bucket that we've seen in other communities is developers and hotels basically kicking in to help fund a portion of the service because it's a huge benefit for these developers and the hotels as well. And then again, the partnerships with the county public transit, PSTA, you know, this really integrates into their system as well. It helps connect people to their bus lines, to their trolley lines for folks that are going further there. But again, at a very high level, we really are very happy with the results of the first 6 months of the program here. We think it's been extremely successful, again, both from a ridership standpoint, customer feedback standpoint, and really, you guys have tons of events that are going on here on almost every single weekend, and this has really been a great tool for you guys to use to be able to help get folks to and from the events, around the events, to the parking lots, et cetera there. So again, very happy to see you guys again and here to answer any questions that you guys might have on the program.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jason. Jennifer, unless you wanted to jump in, I'll just go to questions. I know at some point you wanted to do that. Okay, so questions for staff, and I guess I'll start on this side this time. So Commissioner Gao, you want to just get us started?
Thank you,
I see you writing away over there, so.
I understand that the program's only been in place for 6 months. And also, just real quickly on headway, just for public consumption, what do you mean by the headway?
Meaning that a vehicle would go by a certain stop every 7 minutes.
Okay.
So we had projected to be around 10 minutes. It actually was less. So it was, again, it was a very reliable service that people can wait for.
Okay, so the amount of time that somebody would have to wait for one to come by?
Correct.
Okay, fantastic. And I'm glad that you were ahead of schedule. Is there any data on how many people came into Dunedin because of the freebie service?
I could pull, so again, we have about 1/3 of the riders that use the mobile application. From that, they do have to put their local zip code, so I can pull that data to show, you know, how many of that were locals versus, you know, outside, you know, tourists or visitors, but we don't have, I wouldn't say we have any specific data on that exactly.
Right. And I'm sure we don't have any data on, of those that would be out-of-town zip codes are here every year versus it's their first time visiting Dunedin. We probably don't have that. And I'm just trying to figure out whether or not, is the freebie service adding to our downtown, or are we just moving around people that are already here, is where my head is. So in trying to evaluate freebie. Let me see. When it comes to, and I guess I'll start where we, right here at the end, on the expanded pricing options, where it talks about the advertising splitting between city and freebie, and you talked about maybe getting hotels and restaurants involved. Who's responsible for getting that advertising onto freebie? Is that freebie or is that the city?
So we take care of everything from A to Z. So we have an entire team that would, again, a sponsorship team that would, you know, meet with local, regional, national potential sponsors, and we would handle all of that. And you guys would just.
Okay, and
But I would say, Commissioner, you know, as that occurred, you know, we would certainly want to know who that advertiser was, and that, you know, I think that would need to be cleared through the city.
Correct. Yeah, you guys would always have approval on the advertiser and the creative and what that would look like.
I wasn't even thinking that way, George, but you're absolutely right. Yeah, we want to be careful. Who is advertising? All right, and because I thought under this pilot program, that was kind of going to be part of the concept. So here today, you'd be able to say, hey, here's the businesses we reached out to, and here's what they're willing to offer. Did we go through that process during this pilot program, or is this just something that's still in concept form? We'll do it if we sign another contract.
Correct. So the direction that we had was to keep the vehicles branded for the city of Dunedin throughout this first 6 months pilot. We had some ability to sell advertising, but again, I think the direction was to keep it a branded service, help continue to build, again, on the service because it was brand new there. But we did, again, reach out with a ton of local businesses. On the app itself, there's free advertising for every local business. So we had reach outs to all of them. We worked with the chamber. Every business was able to get free advertising on the mobile app. There was a really, some deals and discounts on there that a lot of businesses were able to offer. But the actual paid advertising, that's some direction we're looking for from you guys today to be able to implement.
Okay. And, I think it's pretty common knowledge in Dunedin that all the residents are pretty happy here. We're very unique. Everybody's friendly. You hear that, it's an everyday thing. And so my question is when we see the number of positive responses about freebie, and we live in the second most happiest place on earth, are we shocked by that response? I'm not going after Disney. So when people say, oh, they gave me a free ride and they said they loved it. Yeah. Are we surprised by that outcome? Are you in other cities to where, oh no, riders hated it. We gave them a free ride and they didn't like it.
I think it's more than the ride. I think it really is the experience that our drivers were able to create. Again, these were happy local residents that, again, bubbled over not only as just drivers, but as tour guides. And it was more about providing this great experience. And I think that's more of the positive reviews and raving that you're seeing from the community there is really the drivers that are making this service, really taking it to a whole nother level there. They've been amazing.
Okay. Sorry, guys.
You good?
Maybe I don't, still got a lot. IP doing right partnerships, who's responsible for goals? Let me see. Is the data showing reduced traffic or parking demands in our downtown area? Which was part of the goal, right? We're trying to keep people from driving around in our downtown core.
Yes.
Do we have any data that says yes?
So I would say the survey, 40% of the respondents said that they would use their personal vehicle if they didn't use the freebie service. So that means that they're leaving their car at home, they're using the freebie to move around, which is reducing traffic and freeing up local parking spaces there.
Is that what that says? And are people leaving the car? If they're leaving the car at home and the freebie service is in our downtown core, it poses the question, how did they get downtown to begin with?
It could be two parts. They might live within the area there as part of the route, or maybe they're parking at one of the surface lots and able to really use the freebie service to move around until they have to leave towards the end of the day there.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, the survey that we've obviously launched across the entire city here, 40% of those respondents said that they would have used a personal vehicle if it wasn't for the freebie service.
Can I just ask one tag-on question?
Sure.
How many people responded to the survey?
I think it says it there.
I didn't remember seeing it.
From this data, it was close to 300 people.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Out of the 4,000 rides, when it 4,000 rides?
8,000 riders, yep.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I just
No,
wanted to
is-
clarify,
and is
because
that-
the percentages can be deceiving unless you know
Right.
the number you're talking about.
And so, right, if we're talking about surveys, is that significant? I don't know the right verbology on that, but
Yeah, the survey.
is it statistically significant? Thank you.
Again, the
on
survey
that.
was only implemented for about a month and a half out of the entire pilot project. So it wasn't from day one to the end of it that we were collecting data throughout the entire, project there.
Okay. And so do we have, and this is just, I don't know who's going to answer, so I'll just throw these out. Have we received any feedback from the Chamber or the Downtown Merchants Association on increased sales or increased butts and seats from our downtown? Do we know that?
I have that, Commissioner.
Okay, and I know through Les and his Penny for Pinellas, when comparing month to month, year to year in our penny sales tax, we're actually down this year in every month but November, right? And so January, we were down 5.1% on sales. So actually, we don't have the tourists coming in. And so I'm wondering, again, if we're having freebie in our downtown, what is the economic impact of that? And I don't know that we can have that, although I think at least data is showing sales are down everywhere, so tourism is down everywhere. So we're not building that up. Ridership is 33%, and the flag down was 66%. Is that people that, understanding the headway, said, I'm too impatient to wait, I'll walk until I see freebie come by, or is it freebie came by and they said, oh, a free ride, but they're already walking with those people taking freebie would have just walked anyway?
So it's a good question. I mean, I can't give you an exact answer on that, but that is something that we're able to implement in terms of a survey question. So one of the capabilities that we have is that on the app itself, if somebody wants to use that, it would make them answer a survey question before they can actually request a ride there, and we can actually gather that data. But I can't answer that, specifically to that question.
Okay. And on the heat maps, where we're seeing a lot of the activity, are you seeing those heat maps? Like, are people going from Bon Appetit to Caledonia or one of our remote parking? Are we seeing a long distance to where they might not have gone had they not, if we had not had the freebie, as opposed to, are they just taking freebie for the one block from Heat Island to Heat Island, getting off and on? That is something that's really walkable. So are they using freebie because they really wouldn't go to that other destination if they had to walk, or are they just using it, because it happens to be there? Who doesn't like a free ride?
I think it could be both. Again, can't give you an exact answer there. I could just talk more conceptually there. But it makes it easier for people to visit more places within the downtown once you have a mobility solution that connects people to where they want to go there. If somebody has to constantly move their vehicle from one place to another, and a lot of people, again, I love to walk, many people love to walk. There's a lot of people that don't like walking and can't walk, don't have that ability. We did a lot of people coming from Mies, a lot of these seniors, they're not walking around everywhere within the downtown there. But I think it's a mix, and again, you might capture some of those folks that could have walked, but I think there's a lot of folks that, again, might have not gone to that next destination if it wasn't for a mobility service that would get them there and then get them back closer to where their car is.
And I can't disagree with that, right? That you can never say all or nothing, right? Everything's a spectrum. I agree with that, but 76% of your ridership was over age 51, and Mies Life was the most active spot. Did I hear you?
Not the most, but it was one of the
highest.
biggest. Yep, one of the biggest pickup and drop-offs.
Which there's a correlation there, then, isn't it? And we could also say that for those people who truly leave their cars at home, that to me is probably the only population captured that tells us, yes, that's true. That they left their cars, if they have one, at Mies, got on freebie at Life, and came to one of our downtowns. So that's, to me, one of the only really metrics that says, yes, it does work for some part of our population.
Sure, and I would say probably majority of those users from there were not using the mobile app. And that's not captured within that age demographic chart that I showed you. That's only people coming through the app there.
Right.
So people who downloaded it, and again, majority of them were over the age of 51 there.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, and I know my mother grew up in St. Pete, and she actually talks about public transit all the time. And when she grew up, they rarely had bus stops. You just kind of walked, and when the bus came by, you jumped on it, and it took you wherever you wanted to go. What a wonderful time that was. Your environmental impact. I love all the data, right, on the CO2 saved, but this isn't talking about, this is only talking about the freebie vehicles, not necessarily any carbon reduction, because we saved on people driving
Correct, so yeah,
into our-
the number would be even larger with that data there. This is specifically just to the vehicle miles traveled of the electric vehicles using electric instead of gas.
And it would only be larger if those people weren't using their cars. But if they have to drive into our downtown, because if parking is such an issue, it would be insanely rare for anybody to use their car to go from place to place, because they could never guarantee the parking spot once they get there. So I think most people might drive to find a parking spot, but once they find it, they're not moving until they're leaving the downtown. Thank you guys for your patience. I really appreciate it. And it just seems to me, this is probably more of a comment than a question, and I know I said at the beginning of this trial that, yeah, if we're going to measure the success of Freebie just on free rides, what a deal that is. You can't fail. I'm a big proponent of walking. I think our downtown is walkable, acknowledging there are some people that can't. I understand that. But even myself, if a freebie were to drive by and say, hey, want to ride? Who isn't going to say no to that? So I'm having a really hard time really measuring the success and the positive impact it's having. And the number of people that are using freebie, that if freebie weren't here, they'd still be in our downtown. They'd still be enjoying our downtown. And other than Meese Life, which is, to me, one of the gold services of this service, is it's giving people an opportunity to leave their vehicles at home and then come into our downtown. And so I'll leave it at that. I'm still a believer in an on-demand service or a fixed route into our communities. I'd rather do that than a looper in our downtown that people can walk to and walk around and enjoy. But that's more for my comments. I'm sure there's other questions that I've missed out on, but I'll let my colleagues have some. But thank you, sir, for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Gao. Commissioner Walker?
Yes, ma'am, thanks. So I do have a few questions related to Commissioner Gao's discussion. This freebie is a tool in our toolkit for traffic reduction and helping to solve our parking problem. And the great benefit to freebie is that it is a visual enhancement to our visual sense of place. It really, I really kind of think it fits, just from a downtown core perspective. I keyed on that 40% number as well, and I really wanted to intuitively take that number to, something meaningful in terms of parking or reduction in traffic, and I can't. I don't think 278 people, I just, unfortunately we can't do that. I can't do it. My question to you, in the other markets that you serve, it would be really helpful if you might have some data, some inquiry with regards to, because I'm sure we're not the first community to face this and face the parking and the traffic challenge. Is there anything that, if we were to make a decision to go forward for another 6 months, is there anything that we can do to assist the city, the staff, in showing the interrelatedness of what freebie provides and the impact to our parking and our traffic? Have you guys ever been asked to do that by any of your other markets?
There's definitely data that can correlate back to that. I think, again, it always comes down to who's riding and be able to get that true feedback from them. That is really where you're going to gather all that specific data from the folks that are actually in the car and being able to ask them a question right there on the spot there. We can absolutely do that. We can put together a really more kind of in-depth kind of in-car survey rather than just a community-wide survey to the actual riders within the vehicles there, and correlate back that to, okay, I was parked over here and I'm using the service because, again, I don't want to continue to take my car out and I'm visiting additional places. And again, there's a lot that we can actually just grab from the data of this type of program through the app itself, through the surveying on there, to correlate back to, again, all the goals and objectives that you guys are kind of laying out in forth here is how are we reducing traffic, how are we freeing up more limited parking. There's definitely ways and mechanisms that we can do that.
Yeah, I think, that would be helpful going forward. As everybody's aware, this becomes a recurring cost, and the recurring cost is not insignificant. And I think in order for us to be able, at least for me, and to be able to justify this is there's got to be some data that shows that we are in part solving our parking problem and we're reducing traffic. Because at the end of the day, that was one of the motivations behind this pilot program. Now, the other question I would have is with regards to on-demand, is that one of your expansion, I can look that up, one of your expansion recommendations or discussions?
Yeah, I mean, I think from the beginning of this program, I think the on-demand program would have significant benefits to basically the size of this territory. I mean, we operate across 40 cities. 38 of them are all fully on-demand services. So what I propose here, because I know I heard feedback kind of from the last time that you guys didn't want to go down the full on-demand path, I kind of put together a hybrid where you can request the ride on demand throughout this basically service area, and it operates more of like a flex route where the vehicles, if they're not on a ride, they would continue along the route until they got a call right off the route, pick them up, take them where they need to go, and jump right back onto the route there. Multiple ways you can do it. You can do a full fixed route. You can do a flex route like I'm recommending here. Or we go with a fully on-demand service where, again, we can kind of enlarge the service area, get more of the residential folks around the community there. And in some cities similar to Dunedin, what we do is we create kind of this zone within a zone where the inner zone is the downtown core, the outer zone is more of the residential communities, and you have to start your ride or end your ride within the downtown core to be able to use the service there. So we have all these capabilities. It would work tremendous here, but it would be more of the direction that you guys want to see with this program.
Yeah.
But we have that capability.
No, and I really appreciate that explanation. At this particular, I probably should have started with this. At this point, I'm not in favor of any expansion to on-demand service. We have local business that provides that. I support the local business, and I should have, I'm sorry, I kind of set you up on that, and I apologize. But I do appreciate the explanation that you did provide in terms of how you would if, you were called upon to do that.
Yeah, and I think the flex route, really kind of provides that in between there. It provides that, really technology-based service. It's going to drive higher ridership, and it's not going to go into the residential neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. And again, with that local business, we've been helping to promote them for folks that are going further. We're handing out their cards throughout the freebie vehicles themselves there. So again, we're here to be a community partner.
Yeah, okay. That's all the questions I have.
Great, thank you. And Commissioner Tonga?
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate your input to this, and I appreciate how you're trying to kind of stay on the outside and let us kind of decide what we really feel about this. However, I would like to make a couple comments about that. First of all, I don't think you were surprised at all. I'm asking a question about the results of this. I think it's kind of intuitive that for example, during the baseball time, we had people that wanted to ride this, and there's people that like to ride this. And so this was just kind of a small little attempt at going from just a few parking areas, allegedly, grew a little bit bigger. And certainly it has a value. For example, when we talk about the baseball during that specific time period, it would seem like you'd want to have some kind of a service for that. So I don't think you weren't really surprised by the positive statements. You've been doing this. You're in all these. You're what, 40? I think you're in 40 places now. When I first met you, you were in 16 or something like that, and continuing support. So I don't think you were surprised by anything, were you?
No, and again, I think the value is,
Yeah.
it provides, number one, it's an equitable service. Public transit is obviously a very important kind of mobility service for all different types of communities for, again, every facet of walks of life here from, residents, visitors, especially workers getting to and from their jobs, helping drive traffic, additional traffic to these. I think there's a lot of benefits to a program like this that, again, it's hard to kind of pinpoint that it's this, that, or that, but it's a combination of all of this that really just enhances the overall kind of downtown experience, especially for tourists that are coming in town, staying locally. They don't have to rent a car. That means that next year they're going to probably want to come back because Dunedin was so convenient to be able to move around to where they want to go. They're spending more money at the businesses because they're not spending on transportation, parking, et cetera. And again, it just has this kind of effect across the entire board that really hits on all these different buckets there.
And I don't think there was, thank you, I don't think there was any thought in your mind that we wouldn't at some point in time want to consider an intra-city function for this, because I think that's where the value is of something like this. The value for us is equaled by the less vehicles in the area, less parking problems for people that want to come into the city. We've had stories about people circling around, can't find a place, and they leave. And the cost of creating that parking, which in a couple cases for us right now is very, very expensive. So if you have an intra-city like this, it would seem like that is also very intuitive that somebody would jump on that. I liked your concept of, I liked on demand myself personally, and I think you know that, and for conversations that we've had way in the past. But I think that the on demand can be on selected areas. You've got all that flexibility. You know how to do that. I know you know how to do that. So I've listened to you before. About creating something like that. Sections where, hey, here's a route. This thing is going to come out here and come around, and if you are 2 streets over, you call, you'll see it coming, and you call and get picked up and get taken where you want, but you have to remain in Dunedin, and you have to end up generally going on that route or touch the downtown. So I think that you've had success with that kind of thing in some of your programs, have you not?
Absolutely. I mean, the on-demand service has been extremely successful in really helping, again, keeping money locally within the community, freeing up parking, and all the goals that you guys have set forth.
So were there any that it didn't work in, and why?
I would say today we have never had a contract canceled. Over 50% of the contracts that we've implemented have expanded because of how popular the service has been in terms of more vehicles, larger service area, more revenue hours. But yet to this day, we still have not had a contract canceled on the on-demand side.
Thank you. I may come back to that in a second, but I wanted to ask a question about the financing of something like this. You've had experience with a large number of cities or municipalities, or let's say an area that you're serving, to create this movement, this transportation where it doesn't require somebody to drive or to have a car or to drive their car. I try not to go too much on the advertising because I don't like advertising on these. I mean, I don't think it looks good coming through our city, our communities, et cetera. But how do they finance? I mean, you mentioned, for example, getting grants, et cetera. And I know this is becoming a big thing within the government at this point in time. But how are there any secret successes to someone doing this? I mean, do they figure out how to get the area where most of the transportation is going to? Do they figure out how to get those people to pay for it, or they figure out, or do they have a magical system for the financing, or are there any?
Yeah, I would say there's different mechanisms for different communities there. The biggest mechanism that we see across the board is through this FDOT grant. It's the Public Service Developmental Grant. It helps fund 50% of the overall cost of the service there, and it's for 3 years. When that 3 years is coming up, to be able to renew that specific grant, you make an adjustment to the service, you add a couple more hours, you add another vehicle, and that just resets that 3-year of that grant there. And again, we've had tons of success with, I would probably say out of the 40, maybe 15, 20 have that specific grant. And it's been a very successful way to continue to finance, grow a program, and then introduce other kind of revenue streams and subsidies through advertising, which, again, could be a little bit more minimized than a full car itself there. You can introduce a fare-based service if you want. Again, that'll pay for a portion. It's not going to make a big chunk into it. But there's, I'll give you an example with the city of Aventura. Every new development that's coming in there, they make the developer commit for a new car for the next 10 years, a new freebie car for them. There's a lot of different ways to be able to be creative to kind of finance and fund these types of operations there. And at the end of the day, if we're able to justify that this is actually providing a return on its investment, then the investment is justified there.
So you probably have a lots of input to that you're not exposing us to at this point in time, but I'm sure there's lots of ways of doing that. Collecting the dollar from somebody is probably not the answer, or creating some advertising, of course, of what you're going to want a piece of, and normally, I'm just talking, if you're a business person, you would say, hey, look, let me have a piece, and you guys keep a piece of it, but it's probably not doing a lot of the financing of it. But I liked your presentation where you talked about how if we add into this program, and this concept of modified on demand, as opposed to just on demand. I like on demand and I like modified on demand concept. And I think has anybody done something like this and just created a certain area within their municipality and tested it that way?
Yeah.
You don't have it, guys, over here, but you guys do have it?
Yeah.
And
again, it goes back to each city's goals and objectives. A lot of our cities, it's maybe a portion of the community there. Maybe it's just the downtown. Maybe it's just a transit corridor where they want to get folks to and from back and forth. And there's other cities where, yeah, it's the entire municipal boundary. But it always, at the end of the day, goes back to your goals and your objectives. And we're able to put together an entire analysis to really show you, hey, this is how it's going to work, and this is kind of some of the results that you should expect from it. On demand, at the end of the day, 9 out of 10 times drives higher ridership, drives more people to use a public transit service. Here within, obviously, the downtown core, you can kind of have this flex where I think you're going to gain those positive elements of the kind of on-demand service, but still kind of keep it within the core here, and also, again, have it also route-based, kind of have that in between there. I think that would be very successful for this core.
And cities have done that. Cities have done a specific area within their city.
Oh, yeah.
Just to try it first, and then we'll add this, and we'd add this, and we would add this. Does that work?
Oh, yeah.
Does that work?
Absolutely. And again, it's always better to start small than to start too big, right? You want to start small, you want to prove it, and then continue to expand it from there, because it's all about level of service, and you want to provide a high level of service when you're providing a mobility solution to the community.
I really don't have very many questions about the statistics that you talked about. I went through them, I read them, I saw them. No surprises to me. I know it's a unique thing for us, so you're going to have people that are going to ride it for fun. I know that. I talked to people that did that, and that's understandable. You get on it, and I don't want to get off this thing. I'll stay on it for a while. But it was just making a point. It was just showing this Dunedin freebie. Sorry, but I'll name it that way. Because it relates to your company and it relates to Dunedin, and Dunedin is providing a service for somebody. And who wouldn't like that, as everyone else has said up here? And in this particular case, it was a uniqueness of it. But they also used it in some cases, and I watched that, to get to some of the places within here. I think the statistics are not significant for me in defense of them, as it would relate to where I think this program can really go. I think it was just the first part of it. I think a broader part. I think the biggest problem is for us to figure out how to finance it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, building ridership over a 6-month period, it's hard. And I think here we were able to build ridership pretty quickly there. In other communities, you might not start to see ridership until 6 months in there. And that's, again,
I've heard you say that for years.
yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy to build ridership for a new mobility service, especially for fixed routes. It's much harder. But again, I think the results that we've seen here in comparison to a lot of communities that we operate were extremely positive. And it shows what this could be for the future, and again, how this become a permanent staple. Obviously, financing is always going to be one of the biggest questions, and we work hand in hand with all of our community partners to figure out really just creative ways to help subsidize the program in the best ways possible. And again, there's different mechanisms. There's nothing perfect, but there's definitely mechanisms out there to reduce that cost.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and
Thank you.
pass along.
Great. And I think Commissioner Gao had one quick question before I ask my questions.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and I really do appreciate it. But first a comment that I know that you doubled in your ridership, but we also went from non-tourist season to tourist season, and in a county that brings in 15 million people as tourists. We'd be surprised if we didn't do that. But my question is actually back to financing, and this is probably more of a George question. Where will the funding come from? Where are we looking at this as far as to be budgeted?
So the original 6-month pilot project was funded through a BPI, and ARPA money was assigned to that. So I would have to probably get with, if the commission decides to continue the program, whether it's for another 6 months or for a permanent designation, I'd have to get together with the city manager and our finance director and determine whether that continues as a BPI with additional funding requests. And I don't know if ARPA dollars can go back to that, or if I have to go general fund. Those are conversations I'd have to have with Les, but we'd have to figure out how to fund that.
Right, thank you.
Okay, well, that was certainly going to be one of my questions, so cool. So it is difficult to make a decision, though, if we don't have an identified funding source. I'm just going to put that out there. A lot of everything's been, that I had was asked. I'm looking for deeper stats, same thing that you've heard up here. The purpose of this was reducing traffic and solving our parking issues. And again, I think the stats, you can't dig in and really get to that, in my opinion. I don't think you have enough, people that responded and enough deep information to understand, who's really coming here, going to the parking spot, leaving. Because I agree, you're not going in my opinion, you are not going to park and then move to go at Casatina, so I'm going to go to Hanu, I'm going to repark. I just don't see that because, again, you're lucky to get a spot. You don't want to move from your spot. We have a very walkable city. And so I'm looking for things that tell me true impact on parking, how many exact pickups and drop-offs by parking. Are people really using the hospital lots, which was kind of one of the thinking, that's where a lot of spaces are, but then people want to go downtown or they want to go to the marina, something like that. So I think if we're going to continue this for 6 more months, we got to find a way to get to deeper stats that are really going to tell us, are we really solving our issues or just moving people around? Meese Life kind of cracks me up because my mother lives in Meese Life, so I've been there a lot. So I see people using it. They love it. I can see where that, and it's kind of cool for Dunedin to kind of bring the Meese Life people down more into the community because they like it. I ask them when I'm there, and people come down, they go for dinner, they enjoy it. The drivers are very friendly when people have walkers, and unless they got a full vehicle, they're very accommodating. Because I think early on, the thing was, if you've got a special issue, you might have to wait for a special vehicle. Well, in this case, they just try to make it work, and typically it does. The other day, I asked some ladies, 3 ladies were going downtown, and 2 of them had walkers, and they were making it work. And I said, "Oh, where are you going?" And they said, "Oh, we're just going to ride around." And I thought, okay, that's not actually why we developed it, but that's kind of cool, right? Because they feel part of something. And that goes to, we've created the Disney ride, so to speak, I guess. So, and they are cool. So, multiple reasons, but it gets back to deeper stats of, we still want to solve the primary issue. That's why we created this. It's a lot of money, and it is an ongoing expense, like Commissioner Walker was highlighting. we got to ask a lot of, we've talked about the on-demand model. Personally, I think the modified on-demand is great, and if we're going to go forward for 6 months, we should do something like that. These particular vehicles, like, how far out could they go if we wanted them to? Like, are these the vehicles that can't go on a road that's 35 miles or above, or what's the
Yeah,
restrictions?
The restriction is it can't be on any road that's over 40, 40 and above. So
Over
it can be on
40.
a 35 mile per hour road.
Okay.
It can cross over 40 mile per hour roads, but it just can't drive up and down a road that is 40 miles per
Okay,
hour.
but they can be on a 35 mile an hour road, okay. I mean, I'll just say this, I'm a little bit limited right now, so taking a ride sometimes versus walking is good. I use the app, I like the app. I was going from East Life to get to as close to my house so I could walk the rest of the way, which I'm about a mile out of town. And the driver, maybe a half mile, and the driver took me all the way home, which was great. And I guess my thought process is, and I want your response to this, it just seems like if we're going to get to true numbers of solving the issue of keeping reducing cars in our downtown, reducing our parking problem, what I was told was that your drivers will go a little bit out of the zone, if they can, depending on what their other demands are to take somebody home. They won't come to your home out of the zone. And it seems to me that we're trying to keep people from taking their car. So it would make sense, and that goes back to on-demand, it would make sense to expand the zone and pick people up at their home and take them in an on-demand fashion. Let me respond to that, I guess.
Yeah, I would say, again, going back to you guys' main goals of freeing up parking, getting cars off the road, that's the way you're going to do it. If you're able to get picked up at your home and driven into the downtown, I mean, why would you take your car out? And that is what we're solving across so many different communities there. So, I mean, again, if we can do it in the most ideal way, that would be the most ideal way to operate this service. You expand the service area a little bit, and you allow residents to come to and from the downtown without having to take their car. And that's truly how you're going to see that big impact of car reduction, traffic reduction,
Right.
freeing up parking. And again, you might not start with, you don't start with the whole city. Start with something a little bit smaller, a little bit more of a
Right.
wider net. And you're going to see great data. All the data you guys are asking for, like, that is truly how you're going to get that data. Because these people have cars. And, if they're using this service to come downtown, they're not taking their car.
Don't go anywhere, Bob. I have a question for you, so stay put for a minute. Go ahead.
Sorry.
But yes, that would,
So
that would be
close.
the ideal
So
way to
close.
operate.
Okay.
I told him he could go.
Okay.
Good try.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess, George, I know, Tiki Rides obviously does some of that, but their hours are more limited, like half the number of hours, right? And they also have only one vehicle. Is that correct?
I can't answer that without, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Vice Mayor,
and
but
again, I think we
I
need.
know it's limited, yes.
Right, I think we need to understand that interrelationship better, because obviously I don't want to, we respect our local businesses and we don't want to, but again, I'm just trying to think about what happens for the future. Bob, so you're trying to leave, let me ask you this question, you can come up here. I want to understand what you're hearing. You're out and about in the city, I consider downtown, you're downtown. What are you hearing out
I
there?
appreciate it. Bob Ironsmith, Director of Economic Development. I'm hearing obviously the ridership is up. I think it exceeded the expectations. I think you're all wrestling with really good questions, data analysis relative to is it reducing some of the parking capacity as far as making it a little bit easier to come downtown. And of course, the other one is obviously the funding cost, which is, obviously a big consideration. But, people like it, just like when we had the autonomous, remember with PSTA, we had that, people were going on there for ridership, so people get excited about anything that's new in the downtown.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right?
You can go now, if you want.
I'm not going anywhere.
The advertising issue, I was a little bit surprised with a 50-50 split. I mean, I would be thinking if we're paying for the service why would you guys get 50% of a split of the advertising?
Well, it's two parts. If you guys want to sell the advertising, you can keep 100% of it. For us, we have an entire sales team that, again, they're salaried, they're commissioned, there's vehicle wrap costs, there's costs to actually sell the advertising. Typically, that's why we do a 50-50 split, but if you guys said, hey, listen, we're going to take that on and we'll sell it, we'll get a sponsor, keep 100% of it. Subsidize, again, it's, we're flexible.
Okay, I get it, Jason. I still think that's a heavy split, even, but I understand. And then a question for Jennifer Cohen. The advertising on the vehicle, if we go down that road, what kind of sticky issues are we going to have with types of advertising that we don't like versus what we like?
I'll have to look at that issue.
Hmm?
I'll have to look at that issue.
Okay. Again, I don't want to get into that. I don't personally like the advertising on it, but I don't know if there's a way to figure out something that makes sense, but I don't want to get in any crazy issues either. Okay, let me just make sure. Let me just ask the funding issue one more time as my last question. We don't have a lot of options for funding issue, do we? I guess the first question is, how would we fund the additional 6 months? And then, and I guess maybe we don't have to approach it yet, but again, from an ongoing basis, if we kept this in any form, got a lot of pressures on the budget, so I'm trying to figure out what that would be. But how would we fund the next 6 months if we wanted to get more data?
That would be
What are the
American Rescue
options?
Act,
Is that?
ARPA funding,
So we basically pull from that interest money or just,
yes.
okay. Okay, that's all my questions. Okay, unless somebody else has another quick question, I'm just going to open it to the public or?
Just a quick question. In terms of startup cost, have we captured the non-recurring element of that? Do we know what it costs to, let's just say, theoretically, we shut down for a few months and then start back up? I'm assuming there will be an additional cost to that, right?
Potentially. Again, just going through the hiring, the training, and all that before. In terms of this program, we took care of all the startup costs. We built out obviously all the charging stations here on our dime. It was about $15,000 to $20,000 in terms of that cost. There won't be too much of a heavy cost.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I want to add a comment to that because the other part of that is to stop and restart. And Sue is almost probably the best person for that. Like what kind of, you're trying to brand it in people's minds. So you don't really want to stop, start, correct? You want to, if you're going to try to get to a workable point where maybe it works for our city, you wouldn't want to take a break and restart just under a different model. Okay. She's shaking her head no for those that are watching.
Consistency is key in public transit.
Yeah,
You want to
I
build
gotcha.
habits.
Great. Okay, I'm going to open it to the public. Anybody in the public want to come forward and weigh in? Okay, okay. 2 people, I think, coming up.
Can you bring up that picture of the vehicle, George? My name is Steve Sandberg, and I live at 416 Glencairn Circle. I'm a regular rider. In fact, I was on it twice this week. Okay, that picture right there, it says Freebie Loop, Discover Downtown Dunedin. And I really wonder how many tourists actually know that that's something for free that they can hop onto and ride around town. My other question would be, is tipping of the drivers expected, or is that included with the contract with the city?
Yeah, definitely not.
Usually, sorry, we're taking all the questions, and we'll get them at the end after we've heard from everybody.
Okay, so that would, I do use it. I think it's a wonderful program. Every time I've used it, though, it has been flagging it down and waving it down. For example, in the 400 block of Main Street, the pickup is over here at City Hall. And I live downtown, so I have the advantage if I walk, I'm halfway home before I get over here. So I guess that would be, is that the best thing we can do to identify what it is? Download the Freebie app, Freebie Dunedin Loop, and then discover downtown. This past weekend, I had guests in from Detroit, and his last name is Freebie. And he had the driver convinced that he owned it. I kid you not. Yeah.
Like it.
But he stayed at the Best Western. He's got a very serious health issue. And it was great. I sent it to him from my app. I sent it to the hotel. I told him to behave and not tear it up. Brought him to where we went to eat and to send him back home. But I don't believe as a tourist, I would truly know that that was something available to me for free. And maybe I'm wrong, but that would be my only input.
Great.
Thank
Glad-
you.
Thanks, Steve.
Hello, my name's Eric Graves, 1413 Bayshore Boulevard. I live in Dunedin. First of all, thanks for supporting Freebie so far, and please continue it. And I think the point-to-point expansion is a great idea. And then another request for consideration would be expanding the days, especially during spring training games when they're home games here. I've used it, I've recommended it to neighbors and visitors, and the feedback is always extremely positive. I know we've seen some of that in the data. And I think Freebie makes our great city even better for both residents and visitors. As far as rationale on it, I think it fits the culture of the town perfectly. I've lived here for a while now. Freebie is very personal, friendly, it's right-sized, it's very accessible. The drivers is the face of Freebie and the town. I've always had incredible experiences with them, and anybody that I've recommended it to, I've had the same positive experience. The other thing that I'd highlight is it's so well executed, and I don't think that's a given. I think some of the questions would indicate, oh, of course everybody's going to love it. You know, it's free, but there's a lot of things that could go wrong with something like this. People could have bad experiences, there could be delays, and that has not happened. So again, I think this is very well executed. It fits the need of the town. You know, I think there's just intuitive parking and driving relief. It's great questions on some of the data, but there's a lot that's intuitive here with the driving and parking relief, environmentally friendly. It's quiet. It's a great experience, especially compared to some of the alternatives. It supports events like spring training and many others that we do downtown, but also I think it's just great for routine use. I'm not super old. I guess I'm kind of old. I can walk around, but it is a great experience. I use it as a resident, and again, I recommend it to visitors, and they love it as well. Please continue Freebie, expand the point-to-point option. I think at least try it out for a little while. And then again, that consideration on the service days during spring training would be great. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to give any input? Okay, we'll close that. You know, quick question before I take comments, if I might. So on the off-season, because I think Mr. Sandbergen's a good example, he's up towards what would be the TD Ballpark route. So if we were to do this modified on demand, would that still be part of the, could somebody up that way still get an on-demand into town?
Yeah, we'd be
Even though it's part of the off-season route?
We'd be able to widen the net to capture more of the residential community here. Again, not the full.
Sure,
city,
right,
but
gotcha.
We can definitely, to where TD Ballpark is and around that area, absolutely with an on-demand service or a modified on-demand as we were recommending.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to close public comment, and I'm asking, I'm sorry, City Manager? Did you
Yes.
want to say something? Jennifer, sorry.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. I want to make a couple comments. Of course, first of all, I wanted to hear the input from the City Commission and the presentation as well. So first of all, as a partner, Freebie has been an exceptional partner. You know, from the startup costs to the way that you run the business, to the drivers who are amazing ambassadors. And I remember when we had our ribbon cutting, and I saw, you know, all the drivers who were not from this area, right? Some of them came, I think, from South Florida. I was wondering how that was going to work out. But they educated themselves. They're very welcoming when they're in the loop, in the looper. And I really appreciate the work that they're doing. Staff's recommendation on the cover of the staffing report is to continue the pilot program, and I'm not entirely on board with that. In terms of continuing the pilot program as it is right now at the full service, at the full level of service. You know, we talked a lot about headways and ridership and those types of things. Remember, we started in November, correct? And that was at the height of the season, and we got through the season, through the spring training to where we are right now. I work in downtown. I live just outside of downtown. I'm here 7 days a week, and there are a lot of empty loopers, looping around downtown. So I'm very concerned about increasing it at its current level of service. My other issue is we keep on talking about freebie, it's free, it's not free. It's not free. We paid, if we continue the pilot program at its current rate, we will pay $250,000 a year. And I think that we need to look, $255,000 to be very specific, and I think that we need to look at this program in its entirety, as well as the other services that we have within our downtown. We also pay almost $250,000 in parking leases. So that'll make our total investment year to year $500,000 for transportation, parking, and looping within the downtown. So I think that we, in looking at the looper, it's not just about freebie. It is about all of the city's entire investment in downtown. And it's also about the expectations that we set for our residents. Once we continue this service at its current level, they're going to expect us to continue the service forever and ever. And we need to understand that whereas right now it's American Rescue Plan Act funding, which is taxpayer funding on a federal level, eventually this will fall to the taxpayers of the city of Dunedin. And I think that we need to make any decision moving forward within that context. You know, whether we get a grant for 3 years, then we're able to extend it, and as Jason said, we have to extend the service to extend the grant. Looking at it in its entirety, the City Commission at the last commission meeting approved a SAFER grant for 6 firefighters, which will also be due in 3 years, as far as the obligation to the city. So we really need to look at it holistically and comprehensively, and not just the looper. And as a former city planner, that hurts me in terms of the service that this is providing as far as multimodal. I would like the opportunity to work with Jason to look at what extension of the pilot program looks like, whether or not we need the current level of service moving forward. I agree that we can't disconnect it and then reconnect it, if you will. But I think that extending it at its full service level of service at this point is not necessary throughout the summer. And I'd also like to take that opportunity during that time to take a long, hard look at those revenue sources. The pilot program was supposed to terminate at this point. And so extending it is, I don't think it's a bad thing. I like the program itself. And as I said, I'm not sure if we need to extend it in its current capacity. And I really want to have better information for the City Commission as far as how we're going to pay for it and exactly what the impact is on downtown. And whether or not it's accomplishing, and I wrote this down, the purpose was to reduce traffic and solve parking, and I think that was the Vice Mayor who said that. And so we can do that. We can try to figure that out and bring those figures to the City Commission. So if the City Commission is willing and Freebie is willing, I'd like to sit down and talk a little bit about moving forward at a decreased level of service and see what that looks like.
Would you kind of maintain the status quo till you do that, or?
I would like to talk to Freebie about that.
Okay.
And it would be another $127,000 for 6 months, too. I mean, that's...
Yeah. No, I was just asking because of the stop-start scenario.
Right.
How do you kind of keep it while
Right.
you kind of dig in as to whether we should do it at all?
Right. Well, we'll need to bring something to you probably on the 30th of April, for sure. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, before we do comments, I forgot to get Steve's questions answered. I apologize for that. I think there are two things were, do people really identify it as being free that are here, living here? I mean, Jason, how would you respond to that?
I would say, always feedback is good feedback, and I definitely understand where he's coming from with the actual design of the vehicle. Putting some more messaging on there that, hey, this is a free ride for you, wouldn't hurt, it would definitely help. Yeah. But yeah, it's something we can change a panel. I don't think you have to change the entire wrap, but having more of a, hey, wave this down and hop in, could work, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know how we're messaging it to our hotels and travelers, that's just another thought. And then the other question is, I think, Steve, it was about tipping drivers. Is that kind of considered included, or?
Yeah, tipping is definitely not an obligation. Drivers are not allowed to solicit tips. If they provide excellent service and you want to tip them a couple bucks because of that, that's a personal choice. But we have a zero tolerance policy for soliciting any type of tips.
Okay. Well, I do feel bad. I should have tipped Carla, but I didn't think they were even allowed to take a tip the other day, since you took me all the way home. Okay, cool. All right, so commission comments, and I guess I'll start with Commissioner Tonga.
Thank you. I asked some questions, and I was kind of leading sort of to where my position is on this. We actually started this as a looper to go between the parking areas, and I was not very respectful of that from the standpoint of I thought we really need to do more of an intra-city, more of a full-range program and test it perhaps in just a specific area. Because the main thing that this is attempting to do is to keep people from bringing their cars into the downtown area. That's really what it's doing, or what we wanted it to do. Right now, what it does is you bring your car into here and then you just park your car and it stays there. Now you can ride around in this. Well, many people they're not moving around that much, or they're going to one place to eat, or they're going to something, maybe they go to one or two places. They don't need the looper to take them there. Then they leave. The big benefit in this service, in my opinion, is the intra-city transportation for us. We don't have that. PSTA really doesn't have that for us here in Dunedin, and this would be some kind of a service that might be able to do that. I think it's a great benefit to people that are outside of the downtown area. If you felt like you maybe ate too much, you don't have to worry about that. You can still drive home from having eaten too much. So it takes that into the equation as well. I think it's a service that we really haven't tested, but we have other results from other cities, and I know they've been very respectful. And I think maybe we should look at that, and we don't necessarily have to create it ourselves. I think a point was made about how this is a very unique program. It's perfect for us. We're a golf cart city. But in this particular case, then you don't have to even drive your own golf cart, and you don't have to bring it down here and park it. If you're coming down for a specific reason, if you want to drive, well, then that's fine. So I'm really supportive of a program that would include some kind of a modified or some kind of a test of an intra-city transportation for us. That concludes perhaps here in the downtown area. You can't do much outside of that, or stays within the boundary of whatever our route is, so that I could get off at my friend's house and could get back on it again. But it just, therefore then it keeps the cars down as well. And it falls under the realm of, or the concept of sustainability. So I think the testing that we did was interesting, but I don't think it's conclusive and should necessarily dictate that we continue with this kind of a program or another kind, other than go to a broader scale of an intra-city. That's what I was for in the very beginning, and remain that way. I don't think we solved and resolved the problem, but it can be with this program. That's how I feel.
So, John, are you okay with the city manager sitting down and trying to figure out what that might look like? Great, thank you. Okay, Commissioner Gao.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. With all my comments about data and lack of data, and it was all kind of focused on, right, the primary focus on reducing traffic congestion and parking issues, I am glad you're here. I had mentioned 15 million people come to Pinellas County every year. 90% of them come by car. And they come by car because we offer no other alternative. Even those using Tampa Airport and St. Pete Clearwater, they rent the car to get here. And so for all the car congestion that we have, it's primarily due to tourism. And so wouldn't it be nice if we could figure out a way to get those tourists from those airports to their destination, whether it's one of their beach communities, hopefully Dunedin is part of that. And then once they're here, offer something like freebie. So that's where we're truly getting cars off the road, truly making an economic impact, an environmental impact. I know that freebie was just turned down on a beach community, and I was devastated by that. It's like, what an opportunity for as long as it takes us to get on to Clearwater Beach or onto Treasure Island or all of those beach communities. What an opportunity that would have been for those beach communities to free that up, which makes those communities that much more walkable. And hotels should be renting bicycles to everybody. So if I can get from the airport to my destination, and then I can walk, I can get freebie, I can ride a bike, and just really make those beach communities and make coastal communities like Dunedin, that is the direction I think that we should all be looking to go. And in that regard, freebie is one of those options. I do like the idea, in that framework, I like the idea that you hit every hotel within the proximity of our downtown. For those people that are at least driving to their hotel destination, you're then giving them the option of leaving their car at the hotel and inviting them into our downtown. And that, to me, is the money. That's what really adds value. The fact that we're using Mies Life, and as we all get older, our worlds get a little smaller. And the idea that we're offering an opportunity to those residents at Mies Life to keep that world expanded a little bit. They do feel part of our downtown. They feel part of our community is just a wonderful, wonderful statement on who we are as a community. But it's all the taxpayer money. Even the ARPA money is still taxpayer money, or it's money from the federal government that could be used to help our local residents. I am a true believer in the on-demand, right? Whether that is from our airports or from our local community. How can we keep cars out of our downtown? But before we do that, we do have a local service, and I don't want to exclude anybody, so I would like us to open that up a little more, if that's what we're thinking of, more on-demand, to allow others to bid on that project. But I haven't heard a bad thing about freebie. I'm glad you're here. I am willing to allow the city manager, I agree with that, support that on her talking to freebie. I guess the only clarifier I want to know is, what does that do for us today on expanding the program? Are you saying give us until April 30th and we can make a decision then? Or what kind of decision are we making today?
So I think today, the comments that you've given to Jason, I'd like to sit down with Jason and George and Kathy to talk a little bit about continuing the program and what that would look like to continue the program until, for another 6 months. I'm not sure what we're going to bring back to you on the 30th. It may be an extension of the agreement or whatever form that takes. But I need to sit down with them to discuss what that looks like moving forward.
Okay, so our recommendation today, the consensus direction would be just to allow you the opportunity to have that conversation.
Yes.
For those conversations. Okay, thank you.
But
I am in support of that.
Yeah, and assuming we're keeping things the same now, I mean, again, not stopping, restarting, so to speak, so, okay, just to make sure.
Right, which means from today till the end of April.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, so Commissioner Walker?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, so first, I do want to say, my wife and I have ridden freebie several times, and I got to tell you, we loved it. It just, and I will.
23-19 authorizing a state revolving fund construction loan.
Can you please remove the deputy city manager?
Remove the gentleman over to the left, please. But it was just great, and the drivers that you guys all brought were, I know a few of them personally, and they couldn't have picked a better group, honestly. And it is the right optic for our culture and our downtown. I totally agree with the comments that were made. However, I'm going to echo what the city manager said. This is a holistic thing that we need to address, and I just don't think the data's there, and I would just package that data into traffic, parking, and economic impact to the downtown core merchants. I just don't know that we have, and again, I asked about, your experience in other markets with capturing this data in the hopes that you can help us help you. But, there's some things that we're going to have to do, in my personal opinion, in terms of how we make sure that we use that as an ends to a means to justify. Greatly appreciate your willingness to be a community partner, hence the question about other markets. The one thing I do want, and I'm going to echo Commissioner Gao, the on-demand, I really think, and you present a very compelling case with regards to how you do on-demand, but I just don't know how we have the on-demand discussion without at least bringing to a full and open discussion with our local business. I think we need to allow them the opportunity to present some element of a bid on this. So that's my thought on that. So anyway, I support the city manager's recommendation, and that's all I've got.
Right, thank you, Commissioner Walker. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what's been said. Jason, I do think the freebie vehicles, they fit, they're fun. I mean, that's why I cracked up when I got that from East Life. Oh, we're just driving around. And I think, and it was funny because I paused at first with that, oh, we're just driving around, because obviously that totally was not, that wasn't in the goal. But when I thought about it, I thought, well, that's pretty cool. Because again, bringing in, what we consider kind of our continuing living facility and more into the feel of downtown is a great thing. But again, it kind of goes back to, and you've heard it, the holistic traffic, parking, are we going to solve those issues? Because again, it's fun and it's cool, but is it solving our problem too? And if we can get to solving our problem too, then we got, that's golden. I think that when I look at the 6 months, I guess I would call it a good start. We've learned some things. I know I have. I love the app because I think, the app is really key. I know that 1/3 of the people use the app, but if it was more on demand, a lot more people would, I think, and it's easy to use. And so I like it. And I think that, sorry, I guess I lost some audience here. So I think that that helps. But again, so I guess I'd say to the city manager that what else are we going to learn in the next 6 months? Because I also agree, demand, modified on demand is the path forward. I just think that when I think about being at my home and I'm a mile out of town, I have friends that'll say, hey, can we park at your house? But a lot of times, it's a mile, and that I'd walk that a lot of times, but a lot of times you're going to a special event, you don't want to. So you want to ride in, you want to ride out. And I think if we can kind of merge that in, we might learn a whole new set of things during a pilot program. Let's see, what else? I definitely appreciate the flexibility, the friendliness that you guys have shown in doing this. I think that kind of covers it. So I'm clearly also on board with the city manager sitting down and working through what an extension or expansion might look like, and how we can, again, almost have 6-month pilot program part 2. And again, as we dive in and dig in to figure out, is there a potential solution here that actually solves our problem and also fits Dunedin? So that's it. Okay, so I think you have your direction.
Vice Mayor, may I make a comment?
Sure, absolutely.
I don't want a misunderstanding here, in any shape, manner, or form. You asked me if I were, I'm not putting this on you, you asked me if I was supportive of her talking with them. I certainly am, but not necessarily with the constraint of of continuing this for 6 months or modifying that somehow. I think we need to move on with this. I mean, for me, my first step would have been a modified program on a fixed route for me, for what I thought we could probably do. I love the concept of we're a golf cart city, and I think we should really strive. I keep asking, and we're gonna see an update to that coming up soon, where we can have much more flexibility of getting around. Some numbers, 69% of people want to be able to take the golf carts around. In this particular case, we've got a parking problem, and we've got money that we're spending on leases, et cetera. We haven't solved that problem with this system. This system can, and it has in other cities. So I don't want to say that I'm in support of her just going and extending this. I'm in favor of her sitting down with them and seeing where can we go next with
Yeah,
this.
understood. No, we're on the same page. I think she'll bring back every option that she thinks makes sense, and we'll go from there. And
Cool.
again, I think for all of us, it's all about solving the problem and pushing that against the fact that it's taxpayer dollars, especially if it's ongoing. So, no, I appreciate your clarification. Okay, I think you have your consensus? You
Yes,
good?
thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, and thank you, Jason, thank you, George, thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Bob, for staying.
You're welcome.
And thanks for the comments from citizens. Those are helpful. Okay, I think next we go to commission discussion. Anybody have a thing to discuss? I'll go to John first.
This is where we,
Yeah, I didn't get any emails,
You
so
didn't
is there
get emails,
anything
no.
at all from anybody
thank you.
for commission
I
discussion?
just got just one thing, then I'm going to have to get at. The Sterling Society Garden Party is this Sunday, and the trolley is picking people up at the Fine Arts Center at 4 o'clock. And anyway, that's how it's going to be managed, is basically trolley service from the Fine Arts Center to the venue.
For the DFAC garden party. Right.
Sorry, yeah, the Fine Arts Center. Yeah,
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay,
that's all I've got.
great. And did you want to, I didn't want you to stay if you didn't have to. We might finish this up in 3 minutes, so.
Oh, I can stay.
Yeah, okay, good. I know you have a hard stop. Okay, so if there's nothing else for commission discussion, I'll go to city clerk's update. Okay, city manager update.
7 years ago.
Okay.
I'm kidding. Nothing.
Okay, any questions for the city manager? Because she did provide her update. Okay, nothing. Okay, city attorney update.
Nothing.
Okay, you guys are easy today. And commission comments, I'll start with Commissioner Walker. You gave yours, but do you have anything else? No. Okay, Commissioner Gao?
Yes, I do, Vice Mayor. I just need to clarify my comments from the last meeting, in which we talked about the need for salary increases. And apparently I scared my mother and a lot of her friends over my comments on, I just want to stay in my home. I just need to tell the residents of Dunedin, I am fine. I didn't mean to overreact. That was actually quite emotional for me. Just the idea is, like every other resident in the city, my property insurance doubled in the last 2 years, and I have 2 vehicles, and each of my vehicles, the insurance doubled. And so it just gets a little stressful. But I have taken care of, I had to shop around my home insurance, so at the end of the day, it didn't double. But that's just because of effort that we had to go through, and residents shouldn't have to shop their insurance every year. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify that I'm not in jeopardy of losing my home. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gao. Commissioner Tornga?
I have nothing.
Great. And thank you for that. It's always a reminder that what our citizens go through as well, right, with our insurance and
my
issues
mother
like
was
that.
quick to tell me that was public. Thanks, Mom. Love you.
Anyway, okay, I don't think is there anything else for the good of the order? Okay, meeting adjourned.